Hi, this is Doug Jessop. With me today, Dr. Tyler Williams. Dr. Williams, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Excited to be here.
So, Dr. Williams, you and I have known each other for a long, long time. Remind me, how in the world did you get into dentistry?
So my mom told me I should be a dentist, and she was going to the dentist a lot. And, I was in high school, was getting good grades. I liked math and science a lot. And I liked working with my hands. And so it was kind of tongue in cheek, but I ended up exploring dentistry, doing some shadowing, studying it in my undergraduate, and falling in love with it.
So, the moral of the story is listen to mom.
Listen to mom.
Okay.
Yeah, can't go wrong.
So, related to mom, just out of curiosity, okay, we're going to have some fun with this. And I love to find out where people come from. So, first, the basic question, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Sandy, Utah.
Okay. And your practice is now where?
We're in Taylorsville, right off I-215.
Okay. Better Sleep, just out of curiosity, where'd you come up with the name?
Well, our goal, in dentistry, I started finding so many people would have sleep problems, especially when I'm sedating patients for major treatment. I would notice people snoring or gasping or stop breathing.
Wow.
And it really alerted me to what a big problem this was. And it goes back even further to a family friend of mine. He played in the NFL and he had sleep apnea. And I just moved back to Utah from Virginia, and he was struggling wearing his CPAP. He wasn't keeping up on it. And we sat down and talked, and we actually came up with a solution where he would get an oral appliance instead of his CPAP, because he couldn't wear his CPAP. It was making him claustrophobic. And he was living in Utah and California, kind of splitting his time. Well, it turns out we got his impression to get his oral appliance started. He heads back to California, and I never saw him again because his heart gave out.
Whoa.
And so that's stuck with me for 13 plus years now, in thinking, if I would have been able to meet with him maybe 6 or 12 months sooner, could that have an impact on him still being here today? I don't know the answer to that question. We certainly know that sleep apnea affects our heart and our bodies and so many other medical issues. And so between those two things, it's gotten me to where we set up Better Sleep, and we're here to help people truly sleep better and help their bed partners sleep better too.
Oh, yeah. So for the people that don't know, what is sleep apnea?
So if you think about our mouth and our nose kind of being a Y shape, if our nose is the top of the Y and our mouth is the bottom of the Y, well, at the base where the two come together, when that gets blocked, we stop breathing and we have what we call an apnea, okay, which is your oxygen goes low or you completely stop breathing. So a lot of people talk about, nose and mouth breathing, and that is important. But when we have an apnea, it means we stop breathing for a split second, maybe a few seconds, maybe longer, and that gets blocked, right? So I think about it kind of like if you flush the toilet with a toilet plunger in there and wonder why the water's not coming down. It's kind of the same thing with our air, is we're trying to get air in, but it's blocked, whether we're coming from our nose or our mouth.
So, and I realize this is a medical question, but you're the medical guy. So what happens if you don't get enough oxygen when you're sleeping?
Well, it's interesting because when we look at studies, a lot of times people's adrenaline and their blood pressure and their activity is higher when they're asleep than it was when they're awake.
Really?
So it's no wonder that some people have just given up on sleep and they say, I don't sleep, right? I lay in bed for a few hours, I go to bed late, wake up early, toss and turn. I'd rather just be up. And that's because their body's probably actually getting more rest when they're awake than when they're asleep, which is obviously a big problem because life's busy and we can't be awake all the time. We need to get our sleep.
How does somebody determine, if you don't have somebody next to you nudging you every time you snore, how does somebody determine that they have this condition called sleep apnea?
So there are a couple of ways. A lot of times people will see us because they're complaining of headaches or TMJ or migraines. Lack of energy is a common one. Or their partner's giving them the elbow because they're in separate rooms now, or they got to have extra earplugs. We noticed it a lot on the in our dental practice because people have a lot of teeth wear, and teeth grinding is highly associated with sleep apnea. So is acid reflux, right? But there are some assessments people can do. People can look up online. There's one called the Stop Bang, and the Stop Bang is essentially an acronym that stands for things like, do you stop breathing? Are you tired all the time? Has someone else observed you stop breathing? P is for pressure, blood pressure. So you can kind of go through these self-assessments, and we use those as screening tools in our office for people to fill out, and then they can kind of self-assess. And it's amazing how many people have it. I mean, just this yesterday, I was reviewing 7 or 8 home sleep tests that we'd sent out, and every single one of them had sleep apnea. And these are people of all different ages, medical conditions, some young, some older. There was one that was kind of right on the fence, but the other 6 or 7 were way into the red on sleep apnea.
I got my wife's permission to say, okay, yeah, she has sleep apnea. And one of her biggest risk things is that she has a really small mouth. So when she was a kid, she actually had to have teeth removed because there wasn't enough room in there. How does that impact sleep apnea?
So one of the biggest current things that we're looking at studies on is the size of someone's airway is actually probably the number one factor on sleep apnea. So typically, sleep apnea was thought of historically, like if you're a male, you're over 65, you have a 16-inch size neck, like shirt size or higher, and you have a history of high blood pressure, well, 95% of those males are going to have sleep apnea, right? But I see a lot of females who are perfectly at a good weight, some even underweight, but very petite. So think about getting teeth removed. I think about kind of like a horseshoe. You can imagine if you had a horseshoe and you cut some links out of that horseshoe and then put it back together, well, it's now smaller. But our tongue stays the same size. And so now you have the same size tongue and trying to crowd it in a smaller mouth. So when we lie back and our tongue relaxes, it's more likely to block that airway and cause sleep apnea.
So what are and again, I have to admit, I'm asking questions that I know the answer on this one because my wife has sleep apnea. And there's this fun, wonderful little machine that you look like you're from the Aliens movie. You know what I'm saying? What's that thing called and what does it do?
You mean the Darth Vader mask?
Yeah, that's the one. Uh-huh.
Yes, the CPAP, right? CPAP, yes. So CPAPs work really well. The acronym CPAP stands for Continuous Positive Airway Pressure.
Oh, okay.
So if we go back to our tongue blocking our airway, what that's doing is that mask seals on our face so that when we stop breathing, the pressure coming from that hose will blow past our tongue into our airway, right? I kind of think about when I was a kid, we would kind of tease my dog with a leaf blower. He hated it, but if you held the leaf blower by the dog's face, he'd kind of bark at it.
Oh, yeah.
And you could see it. And so I think about that's probably how some of our patients feel is they've got this mask, right?
Oh, yeah. I can see the image now. Okay, Zach, my editor, we're going to see if we can find the dog.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, dig that one up from the archives.
You know what I'm talking about, Zach. Okay. Wow. Now, there's one thing that you see on TV, and I'm going, okay, it sounds kind of scary and bluntly really expensive, and I don't know if you do it or not, but there's apparently something that you actually get implanted. What in the world is that? So
you kind of have 3 main treatments for sleep apnea that are FDA approved, right? Of course, you have all these things like, diet, exercise that we kind of go through with our patients, but you have the CPAP, which has been around a long time. And then you have an oral appliance that you wear in your mouth. And then kind of the newer one is the Inspire is one of them. Essentially, it's an implant that goes kind of near your collarbone. What it does is every time you stop breathing, it's going to stimulate your tongue so that it comes out of your mouth, okay, to get your tongue out of the way and open up your airway, right?
Wow. Does not sound comfortable, to be honest.
Yeah. It's new. It does work really well for some people. We have some patients doing great with it, right? And truthfully, out of those 3, there's no one that works for everybody, right? Some people are doing a combination. I have patients who are wearing an oral appliance and they also have the Inspire, right? I have patients with the CPAP and an oral appliance. So it really just kind of depends. CPAPs work really well, but half of people roughly quit wearing them or they don't wear them often enough, right?
Okay.
Some people aren't candidates for the surgery, right? Some people, maybe their mouth size or whatever, an oral appliance isn't going to work. So it's really just kind of finding the option and consultation, figure out which is best.
So Dr. Tyler, there's one thing that I contacted you about, and it was about my wife. So we travel a lot, and she's got the CPAP, but bluntly, it is a real pain in the tuchus to take a CPAP on a cruise. and it's this oral appliance. Help me understand how that works.
So the oral appliance is kind of our niche at Better Sleep, and essentially what it does is when we lie back, our jaw and our muscles will naturally relax and kind of drift back. And when our jaw moves even just a little bit, we kind of think about it like tuning a car, right? Sometimes just a half turn can be all the difference between a car that's running well and not. So if our tongue moves a little too far back with our jaw, it blocks that airway and we'll get snoring and or sleep apnea. So a lot of people come see us because they travel or they go hunting or fishing and they don't have a power source, or they want to go through the airport and they'll have to unpack their CPAP. So when someone's wearing a CPAP and doing well with it, we generally don't discourage them. We keep them on the CPAP, but a lot of people like this for a travel option. The military just did a study on kind of comparing a CPAP to an oral appliance because when troops are deployed, they often don't have a power source and they had to stay healthy. So the oral appliance came out really, really well. And in this study, the oral appliance actually did better, not because CPAPs aren't great, because they are, just because the compliance is very high with the oral appliances because almost everybody can get used to them, whereas not as many people can always get used to the CPAP.
So what does this oral appliance look like?
So if you can imagine a football mouth guard that maybe you had or kids had, boil and bite, think about wearing one of those on the top and one on the bottom at the same time. Okay, now think of it being probably 50% lower profile and custom fitted so it doesn't move around.
Oh, nice.
It doesn't rub on your gums, it just sits on your teeth, right? And then there's some adjustment wings on it or different ways that the two hook together so we can dial people in to find that sweet spot of sleeping well, being comfortable. A lot of times it helps their TMJ out if they have TMJ or headaches as well. A lot of people are clenching their teeth, so it helps their teeth, save their teeth more as well.
Now, I get a little nervous about seeing some products on television and on the internet, bluntly, and there's stuff that's kind of out there that's kind of like this. Why is it important to come to a dental professional to get these things done?
Yeah, so there are a couple of reasons. There are things you can buy online that will be for snoring, right? But they're not FDA approved for treating sleep apnea. So that's the difference, right? So they can't claim to treat sleep apnea, right? And so we get a number of people that come and see us and say, hey, I kind of bought this thing online, tried it, and it kind of hurt my mouth, and I'm not sure if it's working. And so we'll usually move them into a custom fitted appliance. And really you want to work with a dental office that has experience with not just the dental side, but the medical side as well, right? When I got out of dental school, I knew how to make somebody a mouth guard, right? But I didn't understand everything that went into the follow-up sleep testing and working with a pulmonologist and making sure that the patient's screened properly and gets a physical so you can look at all the things that may be going on and help link all those pieces together.
Well, one of the things that I like the best is that you guys have, for lack of a better term, a team approach. And so you've got, like you said, the pulmonologist, the sleep study. What is a sleep study?
So it used to be you'd have to go to a hospital and sleep overnight at the hospital, and they hook a whole bunch of leads up to you and measure a whole bunch of things. And there's a technician who monitors you all night. And those are still used, and they're very, very accurate. They work well. But now, in about 9 out of 10 people, we can do what's called a home sleep test. And it's kind of like wearing a fancy smartwatch. They've gotten more low profile over the years. They used to have more headpieces and stuff, but now a lot of them we use even as like think about it like kind of like my smartwatch, but it just goes on your ring finger.
Really?
Or your index finger with a little cable on it. And so it's going to measure tossing, turning, your blood pressure, your oxygen levels, and then how many times a night you stop breathing, right? Which is pretty amazing that the technology can do that. So people can do it in the comfort of their own home, and it's a fraction of the cost of what a sleep test in the hospital would be.
So what are your patients saying, with regard to, okay, before getting this appliance and after? What kind of results can people expect?
It's amazing, that's kind of the one that stands out to us the most is people say it's amazing how much better I feel, or why I didn't do this sooner if I would have known this was an option. And that's the funnest part for us is we now have couples that could sleep in the same room again, or people can maybe cut back on some of their medications. headaches go away. They're not breaking teeth as much as they used to. They don't need as many root canals and implants. And so it really just, it's amazing and fascinating to me with sleep how many things are interconnected. Because the way, we're going to spend the next third of our life sleeping, all of us, the next third of our life is going to be in our bed, right? Whether we're sleeping well or not. And so it's important that we have that figured out.
So the way that insurance works is kind of a little interesting. And from what I understand, this appliance is technically considered a medical device, which makes it a little different on the insurance. Help me understand that.
Yeah, so these devices, or the treatment, it's a medical treatment, so it's not through dental. So where a lot of people can get confused or maybe run into some roadblocks is if you go to a regular dentist, there are some that can make these appliances, but they're not set up to bill medical insurance. So the reason we set up a medical clinic instead of a dental clinic is one, where we can integrate better with different disciplines of medicine so that people can get not just their sleep better, but also making sure that medications and other surgeries with our colleagues is everything's tied together well. But also, things like Medicare and medical insurance and flex spending and HSAs will cover these, but it's important distinction that this is medical, not dental, right? Even though you wear it on your teeth, there's medical codes for this device. There aren't dental codes for the device. And so that's what's nice for our patients is a lot of people are, getting other surgeries, or they're hitting their deductible, or, their families had some procedures done and now they can utilize that towards their oral appliance where it's covered,
Walk me through the steps of how you get this appliance. Well, first, actually, walk me through the steps how you determine if you need this appliance, and then what happens after you get, I don't know if green light's the right word to say, but, saying, yeah, this thing might work.
Yeah, so typically, most patients are referred to us by other medical providers, physicians, nurses, PAs, all right? And then a lot of people also just find us because they're not sleeping well. They start searching online, or they drive by our office, or their friend tells them about us. And so typically we'll start with kind of a screening where we'll look through their medical history, talk through their symptoms, find out what's going on in their life that makes them think they may be having some issues, right? Now, if we rewind further than that, it usually starts a conversation that people are having at home, which is, I got to figure out why I'm not sleeping well, or I got to get a different pillow, or I got the wrong mattress, right? And those things can help, but usually those are just kind of a bandage for what the actual problem is. So we really try to get the problem diagnosed, and then we know things like a different bed can help supplement the therapy, right? One of those three modalities, like I said, CPAP, oral appliance, or surgery. And so when our patients come in, we'll usually get them set up with a home sleep test first if they haven't had one. When they're referred from another provider, often they've had one. Okay, so then we'll do an evaluation of their airway, jaws, throat, mouth to see if they're a good candidate, if these fit. A lot, like you were saying, have some teeth taken out, so their mouth's a little bit smaller, right? Those people generally do really, really well with an oral appliance. It can take a little bit getting used to because they're wearing something in their mouth they weren't used to, but if you can wear a retainer, you can wear one of these, and it kind of kills two birds with one stone because it keeps people's teeth straight too. Keeps teeth from shifting. But then we would just look at that. Our success rate's very high, but we don't. There are some cases we say, hey, maybe we should look at a CPAP first, or surgery, or some combination. So even people without teeth, we can do this on people who have dentures or implants. We now have the ability to make sleep appliances that fit those as well.
Wow. So people watching this show right now, how in the world do they get a hold of you? How do they figure out, to get some more information?
Yeah, so our number, you can call or text, is 801-901-8990. Or they can look us up online, find us there. And call or text, and then typically we'd have you come in for a consultation, a screening, see if you're a good candidate. If you are, we have this really cool 3D camera that we put in your mouth, and it basically computer designs your teeth, and then we make a 3D image of your teeth and a 3D printed model, and that's what we make the appliance on. And then away you go, and you can start wearing it. It's really fast. The turnaround time is just a few weeks. usually to get a fully custom appliance, people are up and running and hit the ground with it and start sleeping better.
Wow, technology is incredible.
Yeah, it's fun.
What's your website?
BetterSleepSLC.com.
With Dr. Tyler Williams, I'm Doug Jessop.